What is up? Welcome back. 2024-25 NBA season previews. My name is Matt Hanifan. I'm here with Jiarmani. Today we're going to be doing the New York Knicks, who made a really late offseason trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, which involved Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, protected first-round pick, Charlie Brown, Daquan Jeffries. They were also a team who made a very early offseason trade before free agency that kind of, I don't want to say kickstarted free agency, but kind of, raised people's eyebrows a little bit with Mikal Bridges. But before we get into all the nuts and bolts of everything, Jiarmani, man, how you doing?
Hey man, we're talking about the New York Knicks. I'm as happy as you may expect. I mean, Celtics fan and like Heat fan talking about a New York Knicks team. So this seems like a fever dream, but but I mean, I'm good. It's very intriguing to see how this Knicks team like comes together this season. So like, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. So we'll jump into it.
Yeah, man. I mean, 15-32 last year. They were seventh in offense, ninth in defense. They finished, I believe, number 2 seed in the East last year. They got eliminated in 7 games to the Indiana Pacers after injuries to Brunson got hurt. OG got hurt. Like there were multiple guys who got hurt throughout that postseason run, and they just got beat up by the Pacers at home in Game 7 to lose in 7 games to prevent the Celtics Knicks Eastern Conference Finals that I'm sure many of us were, I guess, kind of anticipating, and to some extent, like obviously I didn't want it heading into the playoffs, but like as the East semis kind of shape out, you're like, okay, like this would be objectively a really good series and one of the best series that we've had all playoffs, especially after the Knicks 76ers series in the first round, which was also a very, very fun series to watch and probably the best series out of every single series that was played, or at least an argument can be made for that being the best.
Yeah, of course.
Certainly up there. But yeah, they unfortunately got eliminated. Then they traded for Mikal Bridges. They traded 4 unprotected first-round picks, an unprotected swap. I think another like protected pick, and I want to say later. I can look that up in a second. A second-round pick, Bojan Bogdanovic, plus more for Mikal Bridges, and they also got Keita Bates-Diop in the trade. I mean, I think they moved him in the Towns trade, but they traded a lot for Mikal Bridges. I think that's the grand takeaway of all this. I guess I wanted to just pick your brain here for a second. Like, what were your reaction at the time, and then where's your mind kind of settled with that specific deal?
Are you talking about the cat trade?
No, the Bridges trade.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
you can go into the cat trade too if you want to.
We'll get to cat. We'll get to cat later because like it's a whole timeline of stuff with the 16. But like with Mikal, it's like I look at it and I'm like, at first I was like, oh, they're not bringing back OG. It looks like, but then obviously they end up signing OG. I think like maybe a few hours later to that contract. But I was looking. I'm like, because everybody was just anticipating it's gonna be like the power of friendship Knicks, the Villanova Knicks, that whole thing, like that was going crazy on social media for a while when that trade happened. But I would say that like Mikal, like I remember we were or at least I was talking him up when we were talking about the Nets last year. So like I had like high hopes for him. Obviously this past season he kind of showed that like he can't really be like that number one guy, even on a bad team kind of deal. Like all his stats across the board kind of went down. So I think he find like the best role for him is being one of the like maybe the second or third best player on a winning team. And I feel like going to the Knicks allows him to kind of be more of that like elite role player like type of like mold that was better off for him like when he was with the Suns and they made it to NBA finals and everything. So I look at him and it's like, I mean, at least from my point of view, I wasn't super worried about the trade. Like I feel like it allowed the Knicks to get better. It allowed them to get a two-way wing who can, be able to shoot and be able to defend at a good level. Um, and obviously, I think they were I think that was their plan, was to try to like look at what their roster needed. I think they needed more mobility within the roster, because like you had like Jalen Brunson just running the show, and then everybody else was kind of like, it was like the Jalen Brunson show, and then everybody else was kind of benefiting off of that. So you just wanted to raise the personnel level, and it's real big, especially with Jalen Brunson taking that team friendly extension and signing it now instead of going for the Supermax to allow them to do stuff like this.
Yeah, he signed 4 for 156. Brunson did. It was the max at the time that he was able to sign. I know he could have gotten, I think it was like an extra 100 million or so. It was either next year or the year after that. I can't remember exactly what the specifics were, but anyways, yeah, he signed a pretty team-friendly deal now, which again, most players would wait for them to be able to have that extra 100 million or whatever, 150 million, whatever the number was. They did sign OG Anunoby to a 5-year, 213 max extension, which was a little rich for my blood, just given his durability. Like, yeah, he is phenomenal when he's on the court, and they were very, very successful when he, Brunson, all of them played late last season. But it's just the fact that, like, can OG stay on the court for a full season? Will he be available when it matters most? Like, that's just the biggest question. I can see how some are, questioning whether or not they should have given him that specific contract. But I don't know if you were able to re-sign him if you're not giving him that kind of money. Obviously, the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, they traded Dante DiVincenzo. They traded Julius Randle. They traded protected pick in a 3-team trade with the Charlotte Hornets and Minnesota Timberwolves. They got Karl-Anthony Towns back. He's got 4 years left on his deal with the player option, I believe, on the final year of it. Josh Hart is going to be, I don't think he's extension eligible now. He's going to be extension eligible in a few years. Mikal Bridges is extension eligible now. Mitchell Robinson, who's dealing with the foot injury, will be out until January. Is extension eligible right now. Like, they have a few guys that they could still be looking to pay. I'm not saying they're going to pay Mitchell Robinson, but they have the option to pay him if they want to. But yeah, no, they were a fairly active offseason team at the very beginning of it and then at the very end of it. With the trades that they made, and like, again, to your point, they specifically with the Bridges trade, like they upped their floor, and that's something that, like, he fits. I think he's not a primary shot creator like he was in Brooklyn. Like, that's just not who he is as a player. But he can definitely be like a secondary shot creator, a guy who can knock down 35-40% from deep. Even though I don't know if he modified his shot this offseason, but it just, again, watching some preseason clips or whatnot, it just looks like worse than it was. That looks like there's an extra hitch at the top of his shot. So I don't know how that is going to affect it. I'm sure that'll be, I'm sure everything will be ironed out, dandy by, the start of the regular season and, like, as the season goes on. But I just thought that was interesting. Again, like, I don't pay too much attention to, the workout videos, the shooting, but, like, I've watched bits and pieces of a couple of preseason games from the Knicks. It just looks funky. That's just really it. Like, it looks funky at the top of his release, but that's neither here nor there. And then Towns is, again, a guy who you and I talked about this a little bit, I think, on our Wolves preview. Or no, it was Jerry and I who talked about it in our Wolves preview. That how the NBA is becoming more of a 5-out type league. Like, we saw it last year with your Boston Celtics. We saw it last year a little bit with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, it's becoming more of a 5-out league. Like, that's kind of the shift of where it's going. And the Knicks are kind of fitting into that with the Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, yeah, they needed a center before with the, losing Isaiah Hartenstein in the offseason. They lost Mitchell Robinson, obviously, for the first few months of the season due to an injury. So, like, yeah, they needed a center. They get one with Karl-Anthony Towns, who helps raise their floor and to some extent raises their ceiling just because of what he can do as a pick and pop big. He's not great defensively. Like, he can hold his own. Like, there's points in time last season against Jokic in the playoffs where, like, he was holding his own physically. Like, yeah, Jokic is still going to do Jokic things and he's still going to get his, but, like, at least Towns showed the wherewithal to match up with a guy like Nikola Jokic in that kind of situation when obviously Rudy Gobert couldn't do it, when Naz Reid was getting overwhelmed at times just physically. Like, Karl-Anthony Towns was taking that bare brunt. Like, he was taking that wear and tear, and like that's something that you want to see from him. And obviously there's the past relationship that he had with Tibbs, and I'm guessing if Tibbs is the one who not orchestrating the trade, but he's probably signing off on it or whatnot. Like he sees maybe some of the improvement, or he's willing to work with him again. Because I know there was some like question there about that. Like, all right, how's he gonna? He has Tibbs as his coach again. Like, how is that exactly gonna work? Like, and who knows? I mean, again, Cat is Cat at the end of the day. Like he is a guy who scored like damn near 70 points in a game, and they benched him at the end of the game because he lost them the game last year. Um, there'll just be nights where he goes off for 35, 40 points, and the Garden's going to be, it's going to be rocking. But there's other nights where there's times where he may struggle. But I guess not afford that, but like it's better when you have Jalen Brunson, Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby, those other guys to cover up for some of your deficiencies, to cover up for whatever the case may be. This team isn't deep. At least I don't think they're very deep, but they have some guys that I like off the bench, like a Precious Achua, who Heat legend Precious, if I can say his name right, Precious Achua, Heat legend, Miles McBride, Deuce McBride, a guy who I'm buying stock in right now, Tyler Kolek, their second round pick from Marquette. He's a complete dog. And he's going to definitely be a guy that's going to help him off the bench as a guy who's going to, initiate offense. Like he was one of the best passers in the entire country last year. And he's a competitive MFer, and he's going to go into that situation. Like, yeah, he's a little bit, he's on the smaller side of things. He's 6'2", 6'3", not super long, but he is feisty. And he is just he's gonna do all the little things and set guys up. Most importantly, and I think that's going to be important for them. TJ Warren is on an Exhibit 10 contract with them. Landry Shamet is on an Exhibit 10 contract with them right now. Kevin McCullough Jr., who's on a two-way contract, is another guy that I like. I don't know how much he's going to factor into the main rotation at all this season, but he was just a guy that I like coming out of the draft. It's like there are some guys that I like, but they don't have much depth.
Yeah, it's not looking too good, especially after the Cat trade.
Yeah.
Like losing somebody like Dante, and then like even Julius Randle. I feel like a lot of people were talking about this as like the dynamic that Julius Randle gave like the Knicks. He seemed like, at least for Knicks fans' point of view, he was what like they looked at in terms of like what makes a Knicks player. Somebody who's gritty, who's tough, somebody who's gonna like, act like a bully in the paint. Like this. I feel I feel Julius Randle's gonna do just fine in Minnesota. In fact, I think like a lot of people might say like that team like is taking a few steps back. I think somebody like Julius pairing him up with Anthony Edwards is going to do a lot for both of them. I think and for me, obviously, I think you would have much rather trade and it all dates back to the Gobert trade that like you shouldn't have made in the first place. But um with Cat on the Knicks, I feel like it's gonna allow him to kind of play a little bit more freely, especially not having somebody like Gobert and kind of having him slide to the power forward position, having him kind of go back to being that in that center spot and being pretty much the biggest guy on the court, at least like on his own team anyway. And I feel like it's gonna allow him to tap back into his rebounding game and kind of like unlock more parts of his game. Um, but like to your point again, it's like we're still talking about Karl-Anthony Towns at the end of the day. Like, how is how is his impact really going to factor in? Because the thing I'm looking at is like, yeah, you can run the two-man game with him and Jalen, but then at the same time, the Knicks were one of the, well, at least statistically, one of the worst like passing teams in the NBA in terms of like setting each other up for looks and this and that. Like, yeah, I feel like that number may go up a little bit, bringing in McHale and bringing back OG. And but at the end of the day, is it still going to be like the Jalen Brunson show where you're just running a pick and roll action? Like, yeah, you'll be able to like kind of like add more layers to the offense, and like you have a center who can shoot instead of somebody like Hartenstein who's going to just clog up the paint. He'll be able to grab rebounds and whatnot for you, but like he's not going to be a threat from out there, and it'll probably allow for like the offense to open up. But like these are things we got to think about and things that I will be looking at going into the season. And you see like how Tibbs runs his teams, like he has guys that he'll run into the ground, like even his days in Chicago, like that's just the way he does it. So it's going to be real intriguing to see how this team is able to kind of pretty much stick together in terms of like going through the season, because I feel like this is a team that's kind of like not necessarily a team made out of glass, but it's like that's what the potential it could be, because like you saw how the team pretty much eroded in the postseason. Like even like right when they got eliminated by the Pacers, you had Jalen with a broken hand. You had OG with like his, I believe, like hamstring issues or lower body injuries. You had like, pretty much, I think the only healthy person was like Dante and Josh Hart. But I even think Josh Hart had something going on with like his abdominals, so like he wasn't able to play as much as he wanted to. And even speaking on Josh Hart, it's like, are you having Josh Hart play power forward? Like he's a great rebounder for his size, but at the same time, like, do you want him having to worry about like facing up against other like wings like Jason Tatum, who's in their same conference? The dude is 6'10", and you're having 6'4" Josh Hart trying to guard him, like that kind of thing. It's like this team has a lot of questions. Like on paper, it's like, oh man, this team looks great. It looks like a team destined for the championship. Like that's their ceiling, is being able to make NBA finals. But like at least looking from my point of view, you have to see how it is in practice, because like we can say, oh, the Knicks and Celtics can meet each other in the conference finals, but then at the same time, it's like one team, like there's so many things that can happen through the course of an NBA season, that a team like nobody would have predicted that the Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics were meeting in the NBA or the conference finals this year, let alone the Mavericks and the Celtics being the combination of teams that met in the finals, you know. But again, anything can happen with New York. Like their best bet is that they can be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and they can be the number 1 or number 2 seed. Elite offense. Cat comes into his own, and he just like he thrives in New York. Like these are all this is the optimism that I'm sure a lot of Knicks fans are thinking about. But then at the same time, it could be one night that Cat goes 4 for 14 in a game against, let's say, against the Celtics, like a primetime game, right? And he's getting booed out the building. It's like, oh, this dude sucks. He's soft. You know, Al Horford gave him 25. Like the dude is like damn near twice his age, that kind of thing. It's like things can change on a dime in the NBA season, especially with like especially Northeast fans in general. It's um like if you play well, well, like you will be beloved. If like but then if like you're not playing so well, I think it's more out of love that like we expect more out of you. But it's like I don't know if Cat is ready for that. But if he is, then the Knicks are in a great place. But if not, then I'm not sure.
Going back to your Josh Hart thing, I think that's going to be more like OG and Mikal taking on at least that
I'd
specific
figure as
assignment.
much.
Um, yeah, I just the part that you mentioned about like Tibbs running him into the ground, that's what worries me about this team. That's where I think I can project them from a regular season standpoint. I don't know what to expect when it comes to the postseason because I don't know who's going to be available.
Yeah, because
And that's my biggest like. I think they can make an Eastern Conference Finals. I certainly like them more than a few of the other teams in the East.
Yeah.
But am I bookending it? Not necessarily. I mean, obviously, I've talked about this ad nauseum on different platforms before. Like the NBA is just as much like when the postseason comes, it's just as much as who's healthiest as opposed to just who's best. It's a health battle. Like
Very true.
if you're the healthiest team, if you have the healthiest, like you're higher likelihood you're going to advance to the semifinals, to the NBA, to the conference finals, to the NBA finals. Like that's just the reality of the situation. Like you're not going to make the NBA finals if you're not healthy. At least to some extent, especially if your best players aren't healthy. Not to say Jalen Brunson isn't going to be healthy, not to say that Josh Hart isn't going to be healthy, not to say OG Anunoby's not going to be healthy, even though he doesn't have a great track record of being healthy when it matters most. Not to say Cap won't be like. Of course, I'm not obviously. I don't want any of these guys to get hurt, obviously. But it's just like I think this team can win, 52, 53, 54 plus games in the East. I genuinely do. And that's kind of where they're projected to win this year. But am I certain that they're going to make the semifinals? Or I mean, I think they're going to make the semi. Am I sure they're going to make a conference finals? Am I sure that they're going to make an NBA finals? They're probably the favorite, but I'm not, or at least for a conference finals, I'm not guaranteeing anything for an NBA finals. Again, like Tibbs also doesn't have a great track record in the playoffs. There's times where he gets outcoached, and I know there's certain coaches in the East that have outcoached him on multiple occasions. Rick Carlisle outcoached him last postseason, I'd probably argue. Eric Spoelstra's outcoached him in a playoff series before.
Yeah, TJ McConnell going crazy in that series. At least to his like you have somebody like TJ McConnell who was like that series was just fun to watch for me for that second
Right.
second one. But like yeah, definitely like to your point. And also like we see like especially how we know how Tibbs likes to coach and he likes to go with like the mainstays more often than not. And the lack of depth, it's like it seems like it's a recipe for like implosion.
You can do that. You can do that in the postseason. You can't
yeah.
do that for 82 games in a regular season and expect it to be completely sustainable.
Yeah,
That's just
because like
not how it works.
and also I guess something else I was getting like that I was getting to my attention is that Mitchell Robinson, like yeah, he's out for like half the season, but like there's already been trade rumors swirling about like the Knicks are willing to listen for Mitchell Robinson. So I could easily
Who's going to give him anything?
I don't know. I mean, I was playing 2K and like the Spurs traded for him. It's like but obviously that's not a good reference point to use, but I feel like there will be a team out there. I mean, even if they add something, I don't know how much draft capital they have now after the Bridges trade, but regardless, at least that would be something they can use. Cause I mean, like they still have guys like Jericho Sims and whatnot, like guys who can play like a backup big, not necessarily probably to like again, it would remain to be seen because the thing is with like these kinds of teams with like a lack of depth, somebody's gonna step up at least for a short period of time. There's gonna be one or two players that are gonna step up and be like, oh, okay, like we have to put you in this kind of spot because like we can't have Cat going for 45 minutes a night. As much as Tibbs probably would want him to do that, you just can't do it. Or somebody like OG or McHale, even though McHale's like the quote unquote Iron Man of the NBA right now.
Never miss a game.
Like guys gonna have to rest. Like we got a postseason push we got to worry about. But yeah, so like that it's just so many things about this Knicks team that I'm looking at. And it's like, especially there, like I wonder, like you would assume that they would still end up finding a way to make a trade with someone to like at least not necessarily like get their depth in order because I feel like it's kind of real hard now, especially like especially going into the next few years too with all like the contracts they're gonna have to be committed to and rent and whatnot. But it's gonna be real interesting to see. Like it just seems like this next team has like it's such a like high risk, high reward kind of team. Like the high risk, high reward. Like the aspect of it is like the team can be fragile. The team can just like implode physically and like kind of have like a semblance of what happened last year, where the team just gets hit with the injury bug like right in front of our eyes. Or this team can remain like can get hot at the right moment and get healthy at the right moment, and then they go on a postseason run. But like it's just like it's so hard to kind of like pinpoint like, oh yeah, this team's gonna be here.
Just to go over some of the stuff that happened this offseason, and then we can get into like our projections, even though we kind of already said it. They lost Bojan Bogdanovic in the Bridges trade. Alec Burks, they let him go in free agency after trading for him last deadline. He's in Miami. Diakite was a guy that they traded him in the Bridges trade as well. He's I think still a free agent because he's been traded a couple times and they waived him. DiVincenzo is obviously gone. Hartenstein is in Oklahoma City. Shake Milton is in Brooklyn, I believe. Dwayne Washington Jr. I want to say he was in Charlotte, but I think he may have got cut recently. And then just some of the ads that they had. Obviously, Bridges we went over. Kolek and McCullough, who again, I think like you talk about guys who are going to step up. I genuinely do think Kolek will be that guy. Again, just pure point guard, efficient shooter. He's going to be a guy that I think Knicks fans are going to fall in love with if they haven't already. Again, Chuma Okeke, Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, just guys on Exhibit 10 contracts. I don't know what I'm not sure if they have an open roster spot or not. Maybe one of those two-way guys gets bumped up and they're able to sign there on the two-way. TJ Warren's on Exhibit 10. Like they have, I mean, obviously, like some of those guys I just mentioned like are on, either Exhibit 10s, two-ways, whatever the case may be, or even standards. But they just don't have much depth. And again, it's my biggest worry. Not saying they can't make it far or will, whatever. To read you the picks that they traded up, I pulled it up in the Bridges trade. An unprotected 2025 pick, unprotected 27, 29, and 31, an unprotected swap in 28, a top 4 protected 2025 first round pick from the Bucks, and then a second round pick in 2025. And so, just based on the stepping rule, like they don't really have many picks to trade in there. A team that is going to be locked into the score for a while. So I don't, unless you're planning on trading, Bridges again. I'm just saying, like, if you're unless you're trading some one of these other guys, it's just going to be hard for you to make like a groundbreaking trade. Like obviously you can maybe work around the fringes a little bit. Like if a couple of these guys pop, if Deuce McBride pops and you're able to sell high on him, and you're able to get something back for him, great. If you can't, that's just the reality of the situation. So I'm not completely sold that there is like another avenue to trade some of these guys. And like, yeah, they went all in on Mikal Bridges, so I don't think they would trade him when his contract's up. I think it's more actually likely that they sign him to the extension when he's eligible for it right now. But I think they're probably going to wait a year and see what he does and how he fits, and then probably talk about that then.
Yeah.
But I think this team is a 53, 54 win team around there. I think they're the second best team in the East. I think they make the Eastern or I think they can make an Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not sure if they do, but I think they can. And potentially an NBA Finals if something happens.
I will ask you this question and kind of like as I guess like it could be like the last talking point, but like who do you think? Because you see all the names that they brought in for like kind of like the starting five. They brought in McHale, they brought in Cat, and they brought back OG. Like all these guys are like all these guys are like good quality NBA players. Like these guys, but I want to ask you like looking at the roster, who has to sacrifice the most in this Knicks team for them to kind of like be successful, at least in terms of like the actual basketball being played outside the injuries and stuff like that. I mean, I guess you can include that because that's also important, like availability and everything. But like, I guess in terms of production, who do you think has to sacrifice the most?
It actually might be Mikal. Just because, like, I mean, at least if you're comparing last year to this year, because again, last year he was a primary option. He was Brooklyn's number one guy. He's going to have to sacrifice a little bit. He's going to sacrifice some of the scoring opportunity. I mean, this, like, again, kind of what we talked about earlier, like, he's going to be playing more of a role that he had in Phoenix than he is in Brooklyn. He can obviously do the stuff that he can obviously create and be, one of the most impactful defenders on the floor at any given moment. But I just think from a statistical standpoint, if you're just comparing last year to this year, I think he's the one who takes the biggest step back. I mean, you can probably make an argument for OG because, I mean, again, like, Jalen's going to be the number one option. Obviously, Cat's going to be in that mix somewhere. Josh Hart's going to be in that mix. Like Mikal, like I think OG's maybe on like the last line, like obviously like a 3-and-D guy. Is what you're really looking for a guy like OG Anunoby, even though he can like attack closeouts and he can get to the rim and whatnot. But I do think like if you're just looking at like a role allocation standpoint, like yeah, he's probably the fourth or fifth best scorer in that lineup, or a guy who he can get you 15 a game some nights, but that's just not going to be a consistent role for him. Maybe. Obviously, Josh Hart is, even when he's not scoring, he's going to get a shit ton of rebounds and shit tons of. When I can't remember if it was Brunson who was hurt or not hurt, but out, or it actually might have been when OG was hurt for a while after they acquired him. One of my again, this is just the degenerate me. One of my favorite things to bet on when the couple guys I know, and I did this all the time with Josh Hart, was like always get the rebounds and assists because the market undersold it so much when he was hurt or when OG was hurt, and he would always just get like 17, 18, 19 combined rebounds and assists like every night. Like I swear, like he would get like damn near triple doubles every night. It was the most fun. Like it was easy money. They adjusted after a while, but again, that was the degenerate side of me. But other than that, like I think it's Mikal.
I'd say so too. I guess like I'd say Mikal, but also I feel like at least looking back at seeing like the assist numbers and how like It seems like not necessarily like Brunson was a ball, like kind of like a ball stopper, but more of a like obviously he's the main man. He runs the show. He's gonna score the most points, and he has the ball like 95% of the time, let's say. But I would say for just like bringing up Jalen, if he can find a way to kind of like tap because he seems more like a score first point guard, like off the screen, he's gonna be looking to attack that kind of thing. If you're gonna look to get like you have the offensive weapons with you now, if you can look to get more guys involved, not just just the two man game with Cat or try to get like OG involved, try to get Mikhail involved. Like I'm not saying this is gonna be the first team ever to have 4 players average 20 points a game. That's not gonna happen. But I'm saying like if he can really hone in and try to like add more of a like not necessarily act more like a pure point guard, but be able to like do better at getting others involved. Like you have the ability to do so at least more now with like guys like obviously Mikhail and Anunoby are good shooters, especially they're going to be getting a lot more wide open looks with Jalen Brunson having the ball, and then you have Cat and somebody else, and you can run 5 out, all that other stuff. I just if you can really tap into like what this offense can be and like be able to get more guys involved, I think like this team can really soar. But that's just I'm just wondering if it's going to come at like if it's going to be a like the kind of sacrifice I'm thinking is going to be because obviously like the way I look at it, I was looking at like I know I'm comparing it a lot to the Celtics and everything, but with Jason Tatum took a leap when he was able to kind of be more not necessarily a pass first kind of player, but he was more like understanding when to get other guys the ball in
Right.
certain situations. So like if Jalen can kind of start tapping into that more, then like this team like, on the offensive side anyway is gonna be such a smooth. It's gonna fit like a glove. Bringing some of these guys in and bringing OG back and like kind of like really like shaping that offense.
And like they lost one of their best connective passers in Hartenstein. He was a guy that was like excellent in like short roll playmaking and being able to connect the pieces on the floor at one point. Because I mean, he didn't need to score all the time. Obviously, he
Definitely
was
wasn't
a
taking no jump
hound on the
shot.
glass. Huh?
Definitely wasn't taking no jump shot. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He has a little bit of a floater, but that's about it. I mean, I think Bridges can be that connective piece if you're just looking to like supplement a production loss from there. Um, I think Brunson would have to take a little bit of a step back from a scoring perspective. I mean, it's also just a lot of wear and tear on your body. And he is a small guard, and so that's just something else to consider, keep in mind. Um, I mean, again, Anunoby, Cat, they can all space the floor. It's going to also open up more driving lanes and cutting lanes and whatnot for those guys who are on the floor with them. Because I mean, Bridges, again, I know I talked about his jump shot earlier, but like statistically, not a bad 3-point shooter. Anunoby, not a bad 3-point shooter. Cat obviously is one of the better shooting bigs in the entire league. Brunson's not a poor 3-point shooter, especially like off the pull up and whatnot. Like he's a solid 3-point shooter. Josh Hart isn't a terrible 3-point jump shooter, and I think that's something of his game that he's developed over time. Like you have guys who can space the floor, and I think that's going to be valuable for guys like Jalen Brunson, who if he drives with his left to the lane, he gets a couple feet in the paint or whatnot. If you have a defense on the weak side or strong side or whatnot, they stunt and collapse or whatever, and then you have a driving kick and you put the defense in rotation. And so that's something he could potentially utilize if teams are overcompensating for him. Like, guess what? You're leaving Mikal Bridges open in the corner. Fine. Or if you're leaving OG Anunoby open in the corner on the wing, like fine. Like you're leaving Cat open above the break and pick and roll, pick and pop, whatever, like fine. So yeah, I do think he will utilize that part of his game. I mean, we've been going on for 30 plus minutes here. Jiarmani, do you have any more thoughts on the New York Knicks?
Nah, hey, I'm all good. I mean, like the Celtics side, the Celtics fan of me would be like, "Oh, you guys are gonna suck this year." That whole spiel, that rah speech. But no, but I mean, like I'm very intrigued to see how the Knicks are gonna perform this year and everything we talked about from like the injuries, how the offense is gonna shape up, how like lack of depth and all that stuff's gonna play in. So it's gonna be a real interesting season to be a Knicks fan this year, I'd say.
Yeah, man, I'm very much looking forward to this season. I'm very interested to watch this team, even though it's not the Nova Knicks anymore. Um, Thank you all for watching. Please go like and subscribe. Please go check out VenettaSportsMedia.com. Check out all of our other NBA previews on this YouTube channel as well as on the site, in addition to other NBA content. We're in full swing with the NFL season, college football, Major League Baseball. The championship series just started for them. NHL started last week. UFC is obviously in full swing. Like anything that you can think of, like it's on vendettasportsmedia.com. So please go check all that stuff out. In addition to liking and subscribing and commenting on our NBA previews, any of them and all of them, in addition to the other YouTube content that we have on there. My name is Matt. This is Jiarmani. Thank y'all for watching. See y'all next time.